Hello, my name is Dr. Fawn McNeil Haber, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist at Brave Mind Psychological Services in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Today I want to talk to you about how to help your kids when they're having scary or bad thoughts. I have 6 great tips for you today, but before we get into the tips, I want to talk about what are bad, scary thoughts for kids? And they can be a variety of things. They can be thoughts about worrying about someone breaking into the house. They can be thoughts worrying about divorce or death, or a scary thought about something sexual. So there are quite a diverse array of bad or scary thoughts that kids can have. One study looking at scary thoughts that kids have suggests that 47% of kids have some fears or worries or thoughts that pop into their head about different things. My guess is it's probably more than that have the occasional scary or bad thought. So what do we do to help kids with scary and bad thoughts? What can you do as parents? So one of the first things, before we even get into the tips that I want to talk about, is getting kids comfortable sharing their thoughts with you. Because it's really important for them to tell you any scary or bad thoughts that they're having so that you can help them address it. So how do we go about doing this? We talk with kids about a variety of different topics, even some taboo topics. So an example of a taboo topic to help your kids get comfortable sharing different things is different curse words they might use. And this may depend on whether you use curse words in your house or not, but kids in elementary school start using curse words on the playground and kind of whispering them, and they learn new ones. And getting your kid comfortable telling you about new words they're learning so that, one, they can get the real definition for those words from you and find out whether they should be using them or not. But helping kids know that they can come to you and ask what these kind of things their friends are talking about mean. And so this can be done with a variety of different taboo topics to get your kids comfortable sharing things that may feel a little uneasy for them. When they share their concerns, don't dismiss them. Sometimes as parents, our kids are like, oh, I'm worried about this. And we'll say, you're fine, don't worry about that. But that just tells kids that the things that they're scared about, maybe they shouldn't be, or maybe they're insignificant, or that something about what they're thinking is wrong. And so we don't want to dismiss their thoughts. We want to encourage them to share them, and the things that they think about are important. That doesn't mean you place a whole lot of importance on those thoughts, but that they're important to me, what you're thinking. We want to avoid teasing kids about their thoughts. If they have some quirky, scary, or bad thought come into their head, we don't want to tease them about it. We don't want to bring it up later. We don't want to create a situation where they're worried about bringing it up because they think that parents are going to poke fun at them. Another thing we don't want to do is become alarmed. Suggest to their child that there's something wrong with what they're thinking and how could they possibly think that, and we don't want to get all worked up and get alarmed and get our child nervous that something's wrong with them, that somehow they're bad for having this thought, or there's something defective about them because they had this thought, or that the thought is scaring us, the parent. So be careful not to become alarmed, and on those same lines, not to place too much importance upon that thought. The importance is that they're sharing their thought, that we as the adults take their thoughts seriously, even those that don't reflect anything about them in particular. So we've gotten our kids talking, they're sharing these scary thoughts, we're taking the fact that they're coming to us seriously. What do we do with these thoughts? So one of the important things is really to help normalize for kids that lots of people have a wide range of different kinds of thoughts. Scary thoughts, thoughts where bugs are crawling, thoughts about divorce, thoughts about death, thoughts about their body and the different things that their body does. Remember, boys are getting erections from the time that they're infants. And so we don't want to suggest to them that different thoughts about their body is bad, that We all have thoughts. I think the classic example of a scary thought that I use in my practice is for those of you who have taken the subway and you go down to the subway and you're waiting for the train to come, and if you've ever had like an imagined thought of someone falling on the tracks or pushing someone on the tracks or tripping onto the tracks, those are really scary thoughts to have. And while you might be disturbed by those thoughts, oh my goodness, I would never do that. I would never get too close and trip. I would never push someone. I would never do those thoughts. They're still really uncomfortable to have. And so that's the idea of a scary thought. They pop into our head, and the trick is, and we're going to get to this, is we get to decide how much importance to place upon that thought, whether that thought has really anything to do with who we are as a person, and whether to just let that thought be. So really helping a child to normalize the fact that everybody has these type of thoughts that pop into their head. Next, we want to help them kind of connect if that scary thought is related to something. So let's say the scary thought that's popping into kids' heads is that there's germs crawling around and it's going to get on them and get them in some kind of way. Well, in the era of COVID-19, okay, I can see where that thought might come from. And that, yes, people are talking about getting the coronavirus. And people are talking about hand washing and how you stay safe. And your brain is trying to process all of those different pieces of information and thoughts and how to keep yourself safe. So yeah, it would make sense that you might have some thoughts about the germs that might be around and what the germs do and how the germs might behave. And your brain is really trying to make sense of it all and trying to understand it. Or if you have a friend whose parents are getting divorced, or reading a book about a character whose parents have gotten divorced or getting divorced, you might start thinking about divorce more. Your child might be nervous about your relationship with your spouse, or nervous about their parents' relationship, and if they have an argument, whether things are really okay, and a scary thought about them breaking up and living in different houses. And so helping kids connect where these thoughts might be coming from, that they might actually not be a reflection of what's happening for them. They're not infected with the virus. There's not germs in the house coming to get them. Their parents aren't getting divorced, but that these thoughts are coming from someplace real. And these concerns are coming from someplace real, and that we can talk about them. All right. Third, we want to help them look at the evidence for their concerns about the thoughts. So for thoughts like someone breaking into the house, you might look at what is the evidence that this is going to happen. Has someone ever broken into the house before? Is the family good about locking doors? Do the locks work? Are there locks on the windows? You may want to look at evidence for whether this should be a big worry or maybe just a little worry that we let go. And so weighing out that evidence and helping the kids look at evidence. If you're worried that there is something wrong with your body, then you might provide your child with facts about puberty, about the body, about how the body works and what it does and what's normal and natural. So, number 4, we can think of the thought as something that comes into our head. And this is good for us to think about too, about how thoughts are really just words in our head, images in our head. And the meaning that they have is the meaning that we put on the thought. And so thinking about the fact that there are these words that come into our head, these thoughts that are visiting with us. And so a thought comes, it enters our head, it's this group of words that visits with us. We don't have to interact with the thought. I once had a child say to me when they told me about a scary thought, and that I told them, let the thought be, it's there with you. He said, oh, like it's invited to the party. It came to the party. And I thought this was such a great metaphor, that the thought came to the party. Let the thought hang out. That doesn't mean you have to spend your time talking to the thought. Doesn't mean you have to spend your time interacting or worrying about it. You can just let the thought find a seat, have some chips, and the great thing about the metaphor of a party, there are lots of different thoughts at the party, and you can decide which thoughts to give your attention to, which thoughts to interact with, whether you need to just take a break and sit down, have some food, and then when the different thoughts are done being at the party, they leave. And so thinking about a thought as something that visits, it hangs out a little bit, and then it leaves when it's ready, that you don't have to worry about it, you don't have to interact with it, you don't have to create meaning around it, that it can just be there. And so this can be a big concept for some kids, which is why I really like this metaphor, but talking with kids about this over and over again, just like this youngster that I spoke with, sometimes they make up their own metaphors and how to understand this idea that we can just let our thoughts be and not interact with them. So, number 5, we were talking about how thoughts are words, they come visit. I want to emphasize that point for number 5, that thoughts are words. They're words that come into our head. Let's say you have a scary thought, my parents might get divorced. Well, my parents might get divorced. We can mix those words up. My might, parents divorced. That's kind of silly. It doesn't really make sense. Or my might means I'm strong. We can kind of focus on those words. My might gets. My might divorce. What does that even mean? So like really helping kids disconnect from the thoughts, see them as words that they can actually play with and move around and do silly things with. Maybe they take one of the words and they toss it away and they see the letters kind of go. And you can break down those words into letters. You can actually mix up the letters or play with how you interact with those words, that they're just words, they're just letters that interact in your head that you can do different things with. Sometimes funny things. You can stick an extra word in there. But these are all techniques to separate the thought from the child. A thought does not necessarily mean something about who you are, and it doesn't predict the future. And so the final tip I give you, I like to call it the pink elephant tip. And it has to do with like thoughts. If we think about thoughts as words, think about thoughts as visitors, we can think about thoughts as images. And sometimes there's scary images that come in. And I like to use sometimes, let's say you have a scary image that pops into your head. You can have a big pink elephant come in. And the pink elephant starts stomping around the thought. Maybe it shakes its rear end at the thought. And it's just working its way around the thought as a way to turn that image into something silly, into something that isn't as important. And so you can find ways to play with images. And so there's the pink elephant that can come traipsing through the image. If the pink elephant is too silly for your child or teen, you can do something like sticking the image on a TV screen. So you see the TV, yeah, you got a cool like flat screen TV, maybe you got one of those curved ones, and you stick the image on the screen and you get it nice and on that screen. And then you kind of move the TV back. And you move the TV back a little bit more. Maybe you move yourself back. And you move it back until you have to squint really hard to see that image on the TV. And the image just keeps getting further and further away until you can't even really see what's on the TV. It's so far, it's out of sight. Bye, scary thought. Anyway, I hope these tips help you to come up with ideas if your child has a scary or a bad thought. If you're worried about your child's thoughts or their mental health, I certainly suggest that you reach out to a mental health professional to really talk about what's going on with your unique child. If you find that this content is helpful, I want to encourage you to share it or come join us over at www.bravemindsnj.com. Looking forward to seeing you. Take care.